This is the first year that Montgomery County is recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day, and I am proud to be presenting this proclamation alongside Council President Katz and County Executive Elrich to mark this auspicious occasion. As I said when I introduced the resolution, we have entered into a new era in our nation's history. Old symbols of bigotry are being reassessed and replaced as issues of racial equity and social justice take center stage, even during a global pandemic. I want to emphasize that this is not about erasing history, but instead elevating traditionally silenced voices as part of our historical narrative. We need to reevaluate our old narratives within the framework of our modern values and incorporate all voices, all the stories. Stories of advanced civilizations with sophisticated systems in governance, astronomy, mathematics, engineering, environmental sustainability, to name a few. Stories of a proud people whose land, identity, and standing were assaulted, appropriated, and erased. When we read the proclamation, you will hear the names of Maryland's tribes. In addition, I want to honor some of the tribes from the rest of the Americas, like the Aztecs, the Mayas, the Incas, the Taínos, the Yanomami, the Caribes, the Arawaks, the Guaraníes, and the more than 305 tribes in Brazil. Today, we join over 70 jurisdictions and 7 states that recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, including our own city of Tacoma Park and our neighbors in Prince George's County, Howard County, Washington, D.C., and Alexandria, Virginia. Just last week, Rockville City Council and Mayor voted to do the same. This is yet another step forward in our efforts to create a system which is more equitable and more representative of our identity as a community. While we cannot change the past, we can incorporate previous silenced voices into our historical narrative and set future generations on a different path. Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know if County Executive Elrich would like to make some remarks before we read the proclamation.
Okay, County Executive.
Thank you. And I don't know what's wrong with my video. My camera's on, but apparently to no avail. So I just want to say a couple of things before I do the proclamation. First is, Monday, we observed Indigenous Peoples Day. We officially changed the name of Columbus Day to acknowledge the true history of our country and of the Americas in general, and to acknowledge that history has not been told. And as a former teacher, and actually a student of history, I understand the need to recognize that too much of our country's history has been misrepresented, and actually these two continents' history. And it's time to correct that story. And it's hard for people to understand the forces that shaped our societies without fully understanding history. And the loss of the lands, the cultures, and the subjugations of the economies in the New World, what was called the New World, to the interest of European powers, profoundly shaped the development of what we euphemistically call the New World. Columbus didn't discover America. He wasn't even the first white guy to get to America. But these places were already occupied. And what Columbus did was begin the process of European nations coming here, enslaving people, taking their lands, wiping out their ways of life, and extracting the wealth. So all of us need to understand what happened. You can't understand the present without some understanding of the past. So rather than celebrate Columbus, we are instead recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day as a time to recognize the original occupants of these lands, their cultures, and the sacrifices they were forced to make. As Nancy said, we are in a changing era, and one that requires an accounting and an understanding of how this all got put together. And Columbus is a tiny part of a much bigger story with a much bigger impact. And I'm glad to be here with the council and doing this proclamation together.
Thank you very much, Mr. County Executive. And there's no need for me to repeat what has been said. There is no need, and in this proclamation, there's some extremely good information that we're about to read. But let me just say that history is certainly very important to each and every one of us. But if we continue to allow history to tell us what they shouldn't be telling us, then that is an extremely wrong thing for every person that is a history major, is a history buff. And to change the name is the right thing of this day, to make certain that silence is not something that is applauded, because once silence could be one of the worst crimes that any of us have ever committed. So we are doing the right thing by changing the name of this for this proclamation and for this day as we celebrate it. And we're also doing the right thing by having a celebration for Indigenous Peoples Day. And with that, Councilmember Navarro, if you would please lead us off for the proclamation.
Thank you. I will read the first whereases, and then we can take turns.
Okay.
Whereas all levels of government in Maryland are increasingly working to address historic racial disparities, it is important to elevate previously suppressed voices and tell an accurate history of how government has interacted with all communities in our country. And whereas the Montgomery County Council unanimously adopted Resolution 19-563 on July 28, 2020, which recognizes the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day in Montgomery County, and calls on the state of Maryland to do the same, and urges Montgomery County Public Schools to undergo a review of its curriculum to better incorporate the histories, narrative, and cultures of our country's native people.
And whereas more than 70 jurisdictions and 7 states recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, and in the U.S. 2010 census, 58,657 individuals across Maryland identified themselves as either being wholly or partly of Native American descent, with 21,175 individuals actually living in the National Capital Area. And whereas the Maryland Commission on Indian Affairs recognizes the Akahanak Indian Tribe, the Assateague Peoples Tribe, the Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, the Nasu Wawash Band of Indians, the Piscataway Kanoi Confederacy and subtribes, the Piscataway Indian Nation, the Pocomoke Indian Nation, and the Youghiogheny River Band of Shawnee Indians. And
whereas given his well-documented list of crimes committed against Native peoples, this council recognizes that the legacy of Christopher Columbus must be reassessed during this time of change in the United States. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, hereby recognizes the first year in which the second Monday in October is known as Montgomery County as Indigenous Peoples Day, presented on this 13th day of October in the year 2020, and it is signed by the three of us, County Executive Mark Elrich, County Council Member Nancy Navarro, and myself as County Council President. Thank you very much.